So today I'm going to talk about glaze. If you have constructed your clay and it's dried out and I fired it, it is now bisqueware. And there are a lot of ways that you can add color and decorate it. The most common way would be to apply glaze, so we're going to talk about that today. Here is a piece. So this is a piece of bisqueware that hasn't been glazed yet, whereas this here is a nice, beautiful ceramic piece that has been painted with glaze and then it has been fired again. So glaze is a mixture of minerals and other things that you apply like paint. You paint it on with a brush, and when you paint it on, it's very dull in color, as you're going to see, and then it changes and transforms greatly in the firing process when it's heated, and when it comes out, the colors are much more bright and vibrant, and you see it's also shiny. And not only is it applied for decorative purposes, but it also seals the clay, which is important sometimes. Alright, so glaze comes in jars. You need to make sure that you are looking at the color. This is what the glaze is going to look like after it's been fired. If you intend on using your piece for anything that would involve food or beverage, you need to make sure that you are using glaze that is food safe. So if you have any questions about that, you can ask me about that. But I did research that these Blick Essentials are food safe, so you can use these. There are certain glazes that are not food safe, and it obviously would not be safe to eat or drink out of something with glazes that are not considered food safe. Alright, so this is what we do. I'm going to use this Granny Smith color today, and I'm also going to use Lagoon. You want to use brushes that have more stiff bristles. You also would want to use a wider brush for larger areas and a much smaller brush for details and smaller areas. I'm going to shake it up. Make sure that the lid is on tightly before you do that. And then you want to just dip your brush into the jar, and then you're going to start painting your glaze onto the surface of your piece of pottery. Now you'll notice that this one has grooves, and a lot of times your ceramic ware will have a lot of grooves in it. The glaze is thick and it doesn't like to flow into the grooves on its own. A lot of the times you have to encourage it. So you want to get a lot of glaze on your brush, and you want to dab it to kind of encourage it to go into the grooves. You won't really notice the areas that you may have missed after you've applied your glaze, because the glaze isn't so bright and vibrant and shiny. But after it's been fired, those areas that you may have missed will stand out a lot, and it will not look good. So make sure you're getting in all the grooves. Take some extra time and effort. You want to avoid getting it on the bottom. We do not want to have any glaze on the bottom. Look, I've already done that, but we'll deal with that later. If you are making a mug or a bowl, you want to make sure that you glaze the inside. Something that is going to have like food or beverage in it. Glaze seals the surface, because clay and ceramic ware that is unglazed, also known as bisque, is very porous. It absorbs moisture and water and beverages, and you would not be able to properly clean it if it does not have a coat of glaze on it. So glaze not only makes things look pretty and decorates the surface, but it also serves a purpose. Now, like a piece of terracotta pot, a lot of times those aren't glazed, because you do want the water to absorb into the pot and maybe even out of the pot, because you don't want to have a plant with too much water and it'll kill the plant. So that is why a lot of pottery that is for putting plants in is unglazed. Sometimes the outside is glazed and then maybe the inside is left unglazed, so that some of the moisture can escape from the dirt if it becomes too wet. So as you can see, I'm working on that. Now the glaze dries really quickly because the clay is so porous. The moisture from the glaze is soaked into the bisqueware pretty quickly. So it dries. You don't have to wait a long time to put a second coat on or to add another color. At this point though, I want to show you an easy way that you can glaze the inside. If you want it to be all one color, you can just carefully pour some in there. You don't need to fill it up. Please don't fill it up. And then what you do is you just kind of carefully rotate it until it covers the entire inside. You may have to do a little bit of work, encourage it to move around with the brush, but that, like I said, is a really quick and easy way to glaze the inside of your vessel if you want it all to be the same color. Boom, I'm already done. Now what you want to do, we want to carefully just pour any excess back into the jar, so not to waste it or to have too much glaze inside your vessel. It's really important that we do not introduce a different color into a jar of glaze. That will ruin the whole jar. So we have to make sure that when we're changing colors that we are thoroughly washing our brush out or getting a new brush. Please, please do not get one color of glaze into another jar. These jars are really expensive. This jar is probably $15 to $20, and we don't want to waste that. So I'm just kind of scraping the insides just to get all that excess out and back into the jar. And that was a really quick and easy way to coat the inside of my vessel. Alright, so put that away. I want a little bit of this lagoon color now. I'm going to add some details, so I want a thin brush. Now I want to wait until this first color, Granny Smith, is dry, which it looks pretty dry. And then I'm going to apply some of this lagoon on top. I'm going to add a few coats, well not a few, but maybe a couple of coats of the lagoon because I don't want it to mix with the yellow to make it more green. Please wait until that first coat is dry before putting on the second coat. What else did I want to tell you about this? Oh, let's say I wanted to make this like yellow with purple stripes. I would paint the whole thing, or I would glaze the whole thing yellow, and then I would on top of it put purple stripes. If you try to do like yellow stripes and then purple stripe and then a yellow stripe and then a purple stripe, you end up missing a lot of the area on the pot. So don't do that. Color it, or excuse me, glaze it the lighter color first, and then with a darker color put the stripes on top, or the polka dots, or whatever, if you have a pattern. Alright, so what else? You want a thick layer of glaze, so you really should have at least 2 coats. All of the glazes are a little bit have a different consistency. Some of them are thinner, some of them are thicker, so if you have a thinner glaze you'd want to put more coats on. If you have a thicker glaze you could probably get in a thick enough layer with just a couple of coats. If you don't know, ask me. I'll give you my advice. Alright, so when you're all done, the last thing that you need to do is you need to make sure that the bottom of your pot, or any part of it that touches the tabletop when you set it down, like if it has a handle, that part of it touches the tabletop when you set it down, where it touches the tabletop needs to be free and clean of glaze. So what you need to do, you need to take a wet rag, like a very wet rag, and you have to scrub the bottom. Any part that touches the tabletop when you set it down may not have glaze on it. It may take some time and effort and some elbow grease. You got to get it off. If you try to use a dry paper towel, it's not going to come off. If you use a wet paper towel, it's not going to come off. You have to use a wet rag. I will not fire it if any part of the pot or vessel has glaze on it that touches the tabletop. The reason being, when I put this in the kiln, pretend this is the shelf in the kiln, the glaze melts in the firing process. It turns into a liquid, and then when it cools, it turns into a solid. So when it heats, it's going to melt, and it's going to get onto the shelf of the kiln, and then when it cools, before I can take it out of the kiln, it's going to solidify, and then it is going to be stuck to the kiln shelf, and your piece is going to get ruined, and the kiln shelf is going to be ruined. So it's very important that you make sure that you completely wipe off any glaze on the bottom or any part of it that touches the